Okay, so if you haven't seen Euphoria season 3 finale, then log off right now because we're about to get into some heavy spoilers. And I got glasses on, because I'm in mourning. So let's just take a minute for our homegirl Rue. You know better than I. You know the way. I've let go the need to know why. I'll take what answers you provide. Lord, you know better than I. Oh Lord Jesus, have mercy. Why they took Ruth from us like that? Couple of things. I think that Euphoria overall is a very controversial show, but it does an excellent job of showing, addiction and the impact that it has on, families and people involved. If there's anything that you should take away from the season finale, it would be these three things. One, spirituality is very heavy all season. I've heard some people, saying that they felt there was a lot of MAGA propaganda, but at the end of the day, I don't think we can reduce the connection between spirituality and addiction and Rue's search for God, or her search to replace the God that was drugs in her heart with, a connection to a higher power. We can't reduce that to just like the cultural, moment of, white Christian nationalism in this country. At the end of the day, for years, there's always been a connection between spirituality and addiction, and especially recovery, because if you know anything about, the 12 steps in AA, submitting to a higher power is part of it. So Rue was definitely on the path to recovery this season. She was looking for God in earnest. The problem is she surrounded herself with people who were not vibrating on that frequency. The only person that was on her frequency, that was in her immediate orbit, that, was trying to help her to get to recovery, was Ali. And her mother kind of, but she wasn't really talking to her mother. So Alamo, all them people, Lori especially, they were not good for her recovery, and Alamo literally sent her to Jesus with the fentanyl laced, pills. So again, spirituality, do not reduce that to, MAGA propaganda. I would not. It's definitely an important part of recovery, and many would say even addiction. I recommend the book Thirst by James B. Nelson if anybody wants to really get into like the spiritual aspects of addiction. Second, I do think one important lesson that is also shown in the story is that, yes, a lot of the time, if you don't deal with addiction, the ending is not good. Whether it's, people ended up in jail, people ended up dead. I definitely think that one lesson that I've learned, when I've been in, the recovery spaces, both like leading spirituality groups around addiction, but also, my own journey to free myself of, reliance on like any kind of like self-medication and like alcohol and things like that, was the idea that you always have to play the whole tape. A lot of times the high and the thrill is not worth the consequences for a lot of things, not just drugs, but definitely know that 9 times out of 10 there will be consequences to, the choices that you make, especially choices that involve destructive kind of habits. And I do wish that, Rue had a little better story, but at the end of the day, it's a common story. So it hurt. I'm still thinking about that episode, but at the end of the day, it's very real. And you got to play the whole tape when you make choices to, use substances and get into crime and all the trafficking Rue was doing. It's like it was not going to end well, And then last but not least, say what you want about Euphoria, but it also did a great job of showing the connection between trauma and addiction. One of the main pillars, I guess, of Rue's origin story is that her addiction was connected to her father's death. And you even see, like, when she transitioned, she ends up in the arms of her father, which is like a full circle moment. And of course, like, the trauma that she went through working for Alamo and Bishop and the back pain and broken nose and the scar in her hand all led to her, even taking the Percocet or whatever again. And unfortunately, she took the temptation, given to her by Almo when he gave her them free pills. At the end of the day, it's all so sad, but it's very important to know that trauma and what you're going through, you need to handle it correctly. In an ideal world, we would have had great healthcare. She would have been able to get the right painkiller, whatever, prescribed when she had got the stuff stitched up. But I think you saw her, she was saying she felt great because she was off the perk that, Alamo gave her. She knew she had the whole bottle of whatever was laced in that. We know it was fentanyl, but I think it was a Percocet. I don't know what it was, but at the end of the day, she should have gotten something prescribed to her at the hospital. But when they asked her if she was in pain, she told them she was fine because she knew she had like the little, illegal bottle that Alamo had given her. So at the end of the day, we got to deal with our trauma, whether it's through therapy, whether it's through proper channels of professionals that use things like ketamine and things like that. There are ways, if you don't, want to, sit on somebody's couch that you don't know. There are people that go to different shamans and do ayahuasca or whatever. But the point is, find a professional, find a church, find something, find a way to deal with your trauma. Don't self-medicate, because at the end of the day, Rue's story could teach us all a lesson, and it still hurts, but rest in peace, Rue.